Matt, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Rob?
Doing good, man. Late Happy New Year.
You too, bud. First review of the year. Holidays and all that stuff.
That's right. That stuff affects your life in a good way for me. You know, I can put on an extra 5 pounds and.
I hear that. And
So did you get any,
so what?
I was going to say, did you get anything cool over Christmas?
The giant white things that I'm wearing on top of my head right now. Most will know that my other ones were smaller and black and more studio. These are very bad.
Battlestar Galactica headphones.
The 2000s remake, or are we talking the original?
The original, man. I'm old.
Rob, the fact that I know there was an original.
Oh, so what about anything else?
I'm currently in the process of switching cell phone providers. Hey, Verizon, you're great, but you're not $200 great.
So
yeah.
Big switch?
I'm going from an LG G3, and I ended up going with a ZTE ZMAX Pro, which is a
Nice.
6-inch screen. And even going from a 5.5-inch screen, which the G3 has, is like a weird change.
You'll have to do some thumb stretching exercises at night just to.
Different orientation with the phone.
Well, for our first review of the year, man, I think we've got a pretty good pick here with, do you call it KaOs or KaOs?
Personally, I just call it KaOs because, it's just, I don't enunciate. Like with you, I have trouble pronouncing some of these acronyms and whatnot.
You know, one of these days there's going to be just, a standard good name, something that everyone can pronounce and there's no confusion in. But I don't think it's going to happen this year.
There is, if you ask Richard Stallman, it's Good News / Linux.
So I don't know if folks can see this here, and I'm trying to turn it maybe so you can, but it's such a white, everything within the default desktop of KaOs or KaOs is just strikingly white and light gray.
Yeah. Well, probably we should talk about the install process first.
Yep.
Something I noticed. The install process is actually fairly simple and straightforward. For those that are trying to make live USBs, you can use the USB startup creator, Etcher, or SUSE image writer. Do not use UNet booting. It does not work.
I have trouble with UNet booting on several ISOs, but SUSE image writer to me has been really tried and true.
I was going to say, same. I use Etcher personally, and it works perfectly fine. That, and you can download an app image, so it doesn't matter the distro that I use.
Yeah. Let's see. The ISO on this came in what, about 1.3 gigs or something like that? 1.2.
So what? It's like that 1.5 area. I don't remember the exact.
Hold on, I've got it here. Hold on. Instead of guessing, let's see here. Oh no, man, we're both wrong. 1.9.
Oh, hey, look at that! I was 400 megs off, and you were about the same too. So we're all off and sorts of wrong today.
Yeah, that's okay. So it's and this is their 2017 version. 2017. What was it? 0.1 or something like that.
Yeah. From what I understand, they go by it's like the canonical code way of doing things too. Like they'll do a point whatever for the month. As far as the install, a few things that I noticed. Most Linux distros do not use XFS as their default file systems. I found that intriguing, interesting, and just pretty much that. The actual install process is pretty straightforward, though. You know more about the installers than I do. I see one installer. It doesn't allow me to install the hard drive. That's all I care about.
Well, and for me, it was straightforward as well. Now, the first time I went to install it, I had a failure at about 97%. And so actually on this particular test hardware, I did a reinstall. As you can see now, and we're up at the really the setup screen, which we can kind of both get into, which we both, I think, found interesting and I think is a positive. So this second time around, you and I were talking about it, and we both noticed, and I've seen this with other distros as well, that about at 23% of the install progress, it starts to slow down till it hits about 27, and then it goes from 27 to done in like 5 seconds.
What some of that is I'm assuming it's making like the Squash FS and all, that it's ripping out all it's doing stuff. The problem is like, I don't want the Windows type progress bar that doesn't move.
Well, and the other thing too is it take, depending on, if you're installing on an SSD versus an old slow ancient hard drive, mechanical hard drive, it pauses for so long that if you weren't kind of used to that happening, you would say, okay, something's wrong, something's wrong with this installer, but it's not. And the interesting thing is it kind of boots into a what's called Captain desktop setup. And that is something that you typically do not see within KDE any longer. Do you remember? I remember like in KDE 3 seeing something about Captain or doing something with what they called Captain. Do you remember that?
Man, KDE 3.5 seems like so long ago. I do remember it. I didn't venture out much outside of the GNOME world at the time. So that would have been the GNOME 2 days. I remember KDE mostly when it was like KDE 2. Like I remember using KDE on like Mandrake and those distros before anything else. So
okay.
But yes, I did hear of it.
So, and you probably with the glare you can't see this. So the other portion that pops up there, this is after first boot, is you go through the Captain desktop and you'll go next and you'll scroll through, which we'll do here in just a minute. But you also get a compositor settings for desktop effects that pops up.
Yep.
Now you went through that process. I went through that process. Did you change anything, or did you need to change anything on your end?
The biggest thing that I changed, that giant white glare that I'm seeing on your screen. Way too much white, way too much. It's just too bright.
Yep.
And when you're installing this at 3 o'clock in the morning, about the last thing you want to see is a bright white light in your face. So I changed everything. I changed to one of the wallpapers to like the foggy dock wallpaper that they have. And I believe I changed it to the KDE Dark Breeze theme, just so it brought down the tones a bit.
Well, just for those of you who can't see what I'm looking at here, so under the compositor settings, and again, this is what you get when you first load in from first boot after install. So under the compositor settings, you've got options for animation speed, scale method, crisp, smooth, accurate. Rendering back in, so you could change from OpenGL 3.1 to 2 down to Xrender. Tearing prevention, you can set that up. You've got automatic only when cheap, full screen repaints. And I've had to do that within KDE before because of screen flicker when recording. Yep. I've had to go to full screen repaints, and then you can reuse the screen content. So I'm going to keep that at automatic for now. You also have an option for keep window thumbnails, enable color correction, and allow applications to block compositing. So I'm just going to click OK there and leave that at default. And then from there, Matt, you're going to go into that welcome screen, welcome to KaOs or KaOs.
Yep.
Through Captain. And this is what I like. Now, I'm starting to see here, and you and I talked about this, This is, this is something that guides you through a setup process, much like some other OSs we're not going to talk about or speak of because we'll get in trouble. But here you can set up your mouse behavior for single click to open files and folders, double click, right-handed or left-handed. So we're going to go ahead and step through that through right-handed. And then you get into customization of the desktop. So you're presented with that next.
Yep.
And you had said this from the aspect of someone brand new or someone fairly new, not knowing where to go within KDE. Maybe they're not new with Linux per se, but they've never really messed around with KDE. This kind of brings it all forward.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest thing that I love about this particular setup is, I'm not going to lie, KDE 3, 4, 5, KDE's settings for stuff are all over the map as far as like where are you finding them, where they're hidden. So unless you've used them before, you're not going to really understand where to dig for them. So like personally for me, like if I want to change the icon set, I know to go into hit the super meta Windows key, whatever key you want to call it, and type in icons, and it'll bring you to where you need to go now. However, most people won't know that. Oh, I want to change most people won't change the icon feeds. That's why something like this is good, because it gives you a few options. It doesn't throw a lot of pizzazz at you. It doesn't throw all the options KDE can give you in your face. It keeps it small. It keeps it compact, but it gives you enough customization that certain other distros that somebody might be using soon don't give you without third-party applications.
Right. Well, the next part of this, once you've gone through and you've set up your customizations and your theming and everything, the next process it asks you to select is your application menu style. So you've got application menu, application launcher, and application dashboard. And I'm going to keep it on dashboard right now because it's darker and the rest of it's so white. So then we're going to go next, and then it's going to give you a choice of wallpapers. So I am loving this Captain desktop setup. I mean, just from the aspect of someone new to KDE or maybe fairly new to Linux, this is really hand-holding as you go through the process. And so let's choose a nice dark wallpaper there. And then you get to where you can create your avatar. We're going to skip that. And once you're done, you see an overview of everything you've selected, and that gives you an opportunity to decide if you want to go back and make changes.
Yep.
We'll apply those settings and click finish. And you also had links for help and that kind of thing through that setup process.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so now all of a sudden the screens went blank and nothing's happening, but we'll see. We'll move on.
do note that is because you're plugged into an external monitor right now, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that could be just an X render issue. So,
yeah, and I haven't gone in to do any settings for external monitor. All I did was plug it in, install it. The secondary monitor was attached. So, in all fairness,
yes. So we want to caveat that.
That's right. That's right. Now, this is, and we'll kind of go back and forth here. For those of you not familiar, this is a very KDE Qt focused distro, and they make no bones about it on their website. They know what their target audience is. They make that very clear that, hey, if you're into Qt based apps, if you're into KDE, here's what we're doing, and here's why we are your distro.
Yeah, these guys they're very clear and concise to the point with their message of this is what we are, this is what we do. If none of these things interest you, this is probably not the distro for you. They're very clear cut about that. Also note, this is like Rob said, leans KDE heavy, but this is also 64-bit only. So every application that they put in here, 64-bit only. So with that being said, one of the applications you probably won't find, and if you're a gamer, this is definitely not your distro, Steam, because Valve doesn't know how to make a 64-bit application.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Yep. It is. It's not a gamer's distro. It's not someone who wants access to every application out there like an Arch user would with the AUR. They've got a very focused repository list. But now you did find a similar an AUR type access, right?
Yes. These guys use Pacman in the back end for, you know, getting files and, you know, applications and stuff. They take their inspiration from Arch, but the way they do things is very them. It's kind of like Solus almost, in that there's a certain way they do things that makes it different. They use Octopi as the standard application installer, getter, software updater. In Octopi, I use Manjaro KDE. So in Octopi, you go to Octopi, you got the little green alien head. You click on that, that gives you, well, their version of AUR. So seeing how this starts with a K, I'll say KUR. Because really, that is what it is. It's like a KAS user repository almost.
Right.
And two of the applications that I personally use, you have GUVC, because most of the, how do I put that? Web applications in KDE tend to have issues. Foco Screen's about the only one that seems to actually work the right way for me. There's another one that is ugly as dirt, and it does not fit in with the KDE theme, but it is available from the users. And that is Cineleer, which is a 3-pane movie editor, video editor, sorry. And you are literally compiling that from source, so that is going to take you a while. But I found the application list, though, good enough where I could do stuff. Yeah. I don't know about you.
Well, I didn't spend a lot of time installing applications. I kind of was going through and kind of running through a series of tests, because this is on some very old hardware with only 2 gigs of RAM. And even so, it runs very well. It's snappy enough. It's certainly not a, you know, it's nowhere close to, say, Solus or a fresh Antergos install or anything like that, you know, with XFCE or Ubuntu. It's not light as in that, but for the hardware, it runs fine. And I didn't spend a lot of time on the first installing a lot of the apps. I did spend time going through the apps. Now, I'm a KDE fan, so for me, the idea behind the focus of KDE and Qt, for me, that's good. And speaking to that, this is very current. So you've got, let's actually, if I can get it logged back in here, let's try that.
I think it's KDE 585.
Yeah, it's 585. That's exactly right. It's 585 with a very recent kernel, very recent version of really everything to do with Plasma and Qt and everything. And so I applaud it for that, because if you think about it, if you step back and look at it, it's kind of like a, well, I'm going to use Solus again. You know, very focused on what they're doing, limited repos, although you get a little more access to other applications within, you know, KaOs or KaOs, but very focused and driven, and they kind of make no bones about who their target audience is. You know, we've all gone to these different Linux distributions that we've discovered, and you go to their webpage and it talks about, you know, how we are the Linux distribution for all users, and we are the one who's got it nailed. And you know, when you use our distribution, you're going to think you're in a whole new universe of operating systems. And then you install it and you're like, okay, great. They've added 33 packages that of 22 of I'll never use. They have themed XFCE and turned the panel sideways and horizontal across the screen with a wallpaper that puts 10 widgets on there. You know what I'm saying? Stop me, Matt. Stop me. Stop me.
Yes. To Rob's point, these guys do not claim to be anything more than what they are. And I applaud them for that. I applaud their focus. Now the question becomes, Rob, could you use this as a daily driver?
I think for the most part I could. Again, I'd have to go back and look at the applications to make sure, you know, there's certain things I've got to, you know, I've got to have access to an Office suite. I believe LibreOffice was there.
LibreOffice is in the repositories. It uses Caligura, whatever.
Caligura, yeah.
Because it's KDE.
Yeah. Well, and that leads me to my next point. I guess my biggest negative with this distribution is there are a lot of applications pre-installed that that most people aren't familiar with and have not seen.
That is correct. And if you do not like an Electron app, don't use the Skype app. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
Yeah. So you're going to find, what's the web browser? Is it Midori?
No, it's Quibzilla.
Yeah, Quibzilla. That's right. That's right. Yep.
And for those that want to know, yes, you can get Google Chrome in the repositories. Just going to throw that out there.
Right.
So you can watch your Netflix and all that jazz. As far as like applications, yeah, for the most part, I do tend to agree that you will find applications you have no idea what they are if you have not used KDE before.
That's right.
GwenView, Carbon Krita, Ocular, like some of these are pretty self-explanatory. Killer app though for me on any KDE distro, and if it's the most recent versions because it stays up to date with the stock step of Android app update,
right.
KDE Connect.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is hands down my thing.
It's awesome. I want to back up to the apps a minute. And the other issue I'd have with this distro personally is because you've got all of these apps that I'd never use, and there's several of them. So initially, the first thing I'd have to do is spend time uninstalling, you know, what I'm not going to use, and then searching out and reinstalling what I am going to use or prefer to use. And so I'm going to knock it a little bit for that. But again, you know, we've got, I guess, let's see, what was our rating system, Matt?
I believe it was 1 to 10, unless I remember.
1 to 10. Yeah, that's right. There you go. 1 to 10. And, you know, I'll kick it off. And if there's more you want to say to this distro, absolutely, by all means. I'm not trying to cut it short, but overall, the I can't even say it, Calamares installer, the Captain desktop setup, and the options that you have while you're going through the setup process, the focus to you know, different themes and things that you have. They've got a few Minda or something like that, I believe it's called. I made a note of it. Yeah, Minda. It's an added theme, and their core focus being, hey, this is who we are and what we do, and you know, putting it out there as, if you're into KDE, if you're into Qt, this is who we are and this is what we focus on. So I applaud them for that. You know, so overall, this is much better than some of the distros you had me looking. Man, what were you thinking? No, I'm just kidding. I'm picking on you.
Says the man
we were searching those things out. We were searching those things out, but
React OS, really?
Yeah, there you go. Hey, that thing's in permanent alpha, man. What do you expect?
Alpha? That's being generous. I can't get that installed on a 10-year-old netbook.
For me, I think we're kicking off with a pretty nice distro here, and with our rating system, I would give it a 7.5 because of the things they've implemented, because they are core focused, because of it being a a KDE focused specifically. I'm a KDE fan. I'd give it 7.5, and the fact that it runs on this crappy old hardware is a bonus.
I'm of two minds of this distro, and this is where you and I usually diverge, because I unfortunately see things from the new user and from the typical Linux beard user. The focus, not trying to sell it as anything more than what it is. Essentially they're saying, here's what a Qt based 64-bit only OS can look like and do.
Right.
That to me, and if we're just looking at what they're doing strictly based on goal, they nailed that out of the park, in my view. As a user, I could see this not as my desktop OS. Like a laptop, I could do pretty much everything I need to. I've been running this for a bit now. I don't plan on, until the next time we do a distro review, I don't plan on blowing away this install until then. So, okay. As far as a typical distro, I would give this probably a 7.5 based on the install process, the setting up, the initial setup, and that stuff. I will detract points, however, because the blinding white light of their current theming is just it is not my thing. I want to note one other thing. The panel is going to be on the right hand side.
Yep.
That will, you will either love that or you will hate that. Best recommendation: if you don't like the cascading menus over on the sides, up, down, wherever, full screen, the dash launcher, whatever the application.
Dashboard, yeah.
Thank you. That is probably the best recommendation if you want to leave it on the right-hand side. There are certain pros that I do see to the right-hand side. But anyway, that's where I'll probably detract, because that's a muscle memory thing for me. So 7.5, and if you're going strictly based on principle and what they're looking for to do with a distro, it's an easy 10. So.
Yep. So, yeah, if I were to back up from a everyday user's perspective, I would, because you've got so many classifications with different Linux users, So would I recommend this to someone brand new to Linux? No. Would we recommend this to a gamer? No. And you stated why earlier. But anyone who's an enthusiast with KDE, who really likes that core focus and that concentration in the KDE world, the Qt-based app world, with plenty to customize. Like you said, you start off with the panel on the right-hand side. I don't know that I would ever get used to that, but within KDE, that's a matter of right-click, settings, and drag that panel wherever you prefer it on your desktop. So, all of those things can be overcome. Overall, I like what they're doing. I like it. I think we're going to kick off the year with a positive review on a positive distro.
I very much do too. Yep. So, good way to kick off the year, I think.
I think so too. And you know what? I'm gonna really go in and set this up and in more detail than I did the first time I installed it.
And I think I'll find some interesting stuff with it.
Yeah, and if we come up with something that maybe if we come up with a couple points that are even more interesting to talk about, maybe we'll do a follow-up or something. We'll see.
Yep.
So, well, what's next up? Do we have anything in line for our next dual distro review?
We were talking, off camera a while ago, and we had mentioned a particular distro that we had mentioned about 2 or 3 months ago, and we told them it was partying like it was 2014. They have since put out a new release. Don't know.
We'll see.
I'll let you guys assume which one that one is.
Well, we'll see. Until next time, and if it's, I know exactly what you're talking about. So if we manage to do that one, something tells me unless there's been a tremendous amount of work, maybe we'll be partying like it's 2000 or something. Who knows?
No, that's only me.
Well, Matt, I appreciate it, man. And if the folks out there are interested in a very focused, KDE focused, independent, I mean, this is an independent distro, is it not?
It is. Yeah, they don't. It uses certain back end features like Pac-Man and Octopi and all that stuff, but this actual structure, I believe, according to DistroWatch anyway, is labeled independent.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can compile and all that crap, but
yeah.
So.
Well, I would say give it a try if you're interested in KDE and Qt and That's Your World. Give her a go. So thanks, Matt.
Yep. Appreciate it, Rob.
We'll check you later.
Later.